There has been a lot said and written about Australia's decision to axe the French submarine deal, including an insistence that Australia had somehow blindsided France. The Guardian reported that Prime Minister Scott Morrison had fooled the French and kept everyone in the dark. The ABC claimed Australia had deceived the French into thinking the submarine deal was going perfectly until the poor French were blindsided. Well, obviously the ABC did not see its own report on the matter in June, which was published with this headline: Defence looking at alternatives to French submarines in case $90 billion program falters.
Parliament's Defence Committee has for months been focused on a much larger and troubled project, the French-designed $90 billion future submarines.
It became clear to me that we were having challenges with the attack class program over the last 12 months.
Have you ever discussed a plan B?
It's fair to say that the department is doing prudent contingency planning.
But maybe the French government is so incompetent that they were not aware of the public and widely reported moves to ditch the deal if issues were not addressed. Unlikely, according to, yet again, the ABC itself 4 months ago.
Tensions with the French company designing the future submarines will be discussed at the highest level this month when Prime Minister Scott Morrison visits Paris. The talks with French President Emmanuel Macron are expected to be robust, with Australia delivering a blunt message that the customer is always right.
Well, the Australian Financial Review has for years been reporting on the multi-billion-dollar cost blowout, but apparently the French were oblivious. And now the issue is being used by the ABC to suggest that Australia will be penalised for its climate change policies because it has somehow betrayed Europe. The ABC's European correspondent Isabel Higgins, writing from Paris, claimed this week that the ACE deal had led to the European Union looking at Australia with a newfound suspicion and hostility. Higgins reports that up until this so-called foreign policy blunder, Australia was being protected for its, quote, bad climate policies. Her piece quotes radically left-wing European Union Trade Committee member Kathleen Van Bremt, who told the ABC the slight against the French would make it harder for Europe to sign a trade deal. Essentially, either spend hundreds of billions of dollars on a useless project that will be redundant by the time it's finished, or we will hit you financially by refusing trade deals. That is economic extortion, hardly a proposition in line with our national interests. No mention of that in the ABC article, though. Just an out-of-touch insinuation that Morrison had caused the world to hate us. And Bremt, who represents Belgium, used the ABC to push this narrative. You see, Bremt has actually been campaigning against Australia for far longer than the end of the submarine deal. I don't know if the ABC failed to Google this prior to running that piece, but the ABC itself reported in March that the EU was threatening to slug Australian exporters millions of dollars in European tariffs if it didn't take additional climate change action. And before the apparent shock and surprise relationship breakdown between France and Australia, a French representative is actually quoted in the ABC story threatening it will, quote, not ratify a trade deal with Australia until domestic climate policies are strengthened. Now, they don't sound like great allies, do they? Threatening us with sanctions and refusing to sign trade deals if we don't pass laws here, independently in Australia, that they want. No wonder the UK left this corrupt, belligerent and overreaching body. And guess who else mentioned in the March ABC article? That's right, it's Kathleen Van Bremt again, prior to the submarine contract being axed, threatening that no FTA deal would be signed if Australia didn't promise to phase out coal completely. The ABC was publishing misinformation by attempting to paint the European threats of economic extortion through the lens of a bungled submarine deal. The submarine deal clearly had nothing to do with any of the outrage, because the outrage predicated the deal ending by several months even. Taxpayers deserve our money and policies to best serve us, not France, Belgium or Europe. And for the ABC to be forking out for a correspondent in Paris who fell for so many false narratives, perhaps they need to reassess the concept of value for money. Now, Sophie, I want to go to you because you're a media writer and you watch very closely how these narratives go through the national broadcaster. What did you make of this insistence from the ABC that the poor French have to be taken seriously over our own government, our own country?
Well, look, Jack, I'd like to be sent to the Paris Bureau for a while. That sounds really quite nice at the moment. But look, the ABC, it's their agenda-driven journalism here. Can we go back to straight news reporting? I mean, this seems to escape a lot of journalists over there at Ultimo. And also looking at the issues with this submarine deal, there's been issues, as you've pointed out, for a long time. It's not like this was suddenly a problem that no one knew about. There's been reports on this for months, if not years. And the ABC, again, pushing an anti-Morrison, anti-federal government agenda, which suits their narrative beautifully. And stories like this are proof of that. They need to go back to straight reporting and also look at the issues with Australia. Do they want to continue on with a deal that was a dud, or do they want to make the chop and change? And that's what they've done. And if it's going to upset the French, well, unfortunately, that happens when deals don't go the way that they should. And the ABC need to seriously look at some of their reporting over there in Paris.
Yeah, James, it's a good point. Maybe we should be the ones upset at the French for failing to get the deal in order, letting it to blow out. And another point on what Sophie said, I love the idea of this ABC correspondent swanning around Paris, going to all the cafes and getting her quotes for that article from one really hyper-progressive left-wing representative of the EU and then using that as the basis of the story.
Well, I mean, Jack, Sophie, come on, let's think about it. The ABC using glib rent-a-quotes from people, whether it's about the submarines deal or climate change or pandemic panic. Come on, let's get real. That is their absolute stock in trade, because the ABC, their entire line is, reminds me of, I think it was Orwell who said that a liberal is somebody too broad-minded to take their own side or the country's own side in an argument. And that's exactly where we are here with the ABC. No one's saying they need to cheerlead for Australia, but they should, if they really want to look into this deal more, I think, more appropriately and more interestingly, they should go look at how the thing was signed. Look at how France got the deal over the line with us against competitor nations like Japan by basically promising us the world. But everybody you talk to who actually knows how the deal was structured knows that this thing was going to be a dud, that the French were probably going to wind up trying to build the first boats in France because the skills and technology weren't here to do it, on the one hand, and then also they should look at French history, French diplomatic history, since de Gaulle has been one of fighting with allies in the West, whether it's, his arguments with Winston Churchill, whether it is France having a fight with NATO because of the United States involvement and pulling out in the 50s and 60s. Today, this petulance again because of this submarines deal. You know what? They get over it. You have to understand that this sort of oppositionalism is very much in the French diplomatic blood. This is how they do business. They will be fine. They will get over it. We will get over it. The French ambassador is coming back. I'm sure he's thinking, gee, couldn't I have stayed a little bit longer in Paris rather than going down to lockdown Canberra? Woo-hoo, But although I will say Australian coffee, for all of French delights, is far better than what you get in France. But that's about all he's got to look forward to down in Canberra. But, come on, ABC. It's just a beat-up that is, as you say, I think, trying to run a political line that says, oh, the Morrison government screwed up the deal with the submarines and now, our allies are angry at us, blah, blah, blah. Nah.
Well said, James. And I think he's already supposed to be coming in today, so he's already going to be back in Canberra. One massive beat up. It was all doom and gloom. It was supposed to be the end of the world, the end of the ties. The ambassador is back in Canberra already. So there you go.